Hello Horror Hounds, welcome to the fourth stop on Blood on the Tracks, our little mini season looking at train themed horror movies. This particular stop is for 2008's Train. It was written and directed by Gideon Raff, who went on to create, write and direct an Israeli TV drama called Prisoners of War that we in the West know as the series that was developed into Homeland. He's won a couple of Emmys for Homeland. He's doing really well for himself, so he won't care when I tell you in a minute what I think about Train. One of the unexpected themes that's cropped up in Blood on the Tracks, certainly not planned, has been the notion of art versus commerce. When we looked at Terror Train, that is a film that was admittedly pitched as Halloween on a train. The buck came first and the artistry came second. It just so happens that there's some interesting things going on in that movie. Then we looked at Night Train Murders, which is clearly riding on the success of Last House on the Left and uses almost to a T the Last House on the Left template, but because of the sensibilities of the creative people behind the camera, that film itself, despite essentially starting off as a cash grab, has something to offer, like Terror Train. Interestingly, now with Train, this began life being announced to the industry as a remake of Terror Train, starring Thora Birch from American Beauty, or to give her full name, Thora What Happened Birch. Somewhere in development, this morphed, the intention morphed from being a straight up remake of Terror Train to, as it's put, its own thing. And what that own thing ends up being is Hostel on a train. And really what we have here in the fourth entry is the best example I can see of when commerce wins out over artistry. This is clearly, as with the previous entries, trying to ride on the success of the coattails of Hostel, as many films did subsequent to it. But this one is all about the bottom line. This is so soulless, so poorly put together. The look and the aesthetic of the film is mapped so closely onto that of Hostel that it screams contempt for its audience. I loathed it. Before I tear into this, the practical effects are excellent. They're great. But what I will say is, gore for the sake of gore just leaves me completely cold. And this is a mean-spirited and nasty little movie. Thora Birch is good in it, but I swear to the frame you can point to the moment where she just gives up caring and just coasts through the rest of the movie. The only other high spot is an actor called Gideon Emery, who plays, I guess, an assistant to the sports coach who's looking after these group of kids. Every time he's on screen, he's likable, relatable, and he does a good job. Everything else about this is utter fucking trash. Let's touch on Hostel just briefly. Hostel gets unfairly maligned as kicking off what's known as the torture porn subgenre. And I don't think that's a fair accusation to level at Hostel. When compared to shit like this, Hostel has a point to all of the violence, extreme as it is, shown on screen. It's not violence for violence sake. There is something going on there. There's actually something quite clever going on in Hostel, and the dynamic it asks its protagonists and then us to participate in the first half compared to the dynamic, the things that happen to them in the second half, is really shining quite a bright light on us in the audience in a very metatextual way, and asking us to interrogate why we like these kind of movies and what we want from them. There's also some consumerist satire and attack on consumerism there in Hostel. It just happens that because Hostel was a success, many other cookie cutter movies were made in that vein, completely missing the point of what Hostel said and what Hostel did successfully. A similar thing happened with Blair Witch. All of the found footage movies that came after Blair Witch, because people were seeing a low budget, high return, completely missed the point of why Blair Witch was so successful, just took the template and replicated that. And what they left behind was the soul. And what this movie left behind was the soul and the brains of Hostel. And yes, I think Hostel has a soul, and I think it has brains. And whereas Terror Train and Night Train Murders added something of their own to that template to give us something interesting for, yes, films that are riding on the success of previous films, but add something of their own to the mix. This adds nothing. It's fucking garbage. The film follows a group of American college wrestlers in Europe on some sort of tournament, and we start with one leg of the tournament, and then they have to catch a train the next morning to go to Odessa for the next leg of it. But some of them go to a party and miss the train, and then they have to catch another train. It's fucking mind-numbing. And yeah, the train that they catch is essentially Hostel on a train. And all the way through, from the fucking second they step on the train, you will start to just want this fucking thing to be over. I don't often check the running time of a film while I'm watching it, but I checked to see how long this film had to go at the hour mark, and I was surprised to find that there were still 30 minutes left, because I felt like I was in some sort of purgatory where time gets stretched in the presence of these fucking annoying twat characters in their ridiculous plot that makes absolutely no sense. Why you get on board a train and happily hand over your passports to greasy, toothless fucking locals who ostensibly work on the train but look like they've essentially escaped from a really low budget remake of The Hills Have Eyes, just because they tell you that there are thieves on the train and your passports will be a lot safer with them. Makes absolutely no fucking sense. Why include it? The fact that they have no passports plays absolutely no future part in this movie. The only reason it's fucking in there is because the characters in Hostel handed over their fucking passports when they checked into the hostel in Hostel. So they've got to be a thing when they hand over their passports, right? They've got to do it in Hostel, but they've got to do it in train. Why? Well, don't ask why. It happened in Hostel, so it's got to happen in train, right? That's why. Now, the operation, I'm going to spoil the shit out of this movie, by the way. The operation in Hostel, you know what the deal was. People paid to torture and kill other people to get their kicks. It was a meta commentary on people who like horror movies, and not an antagonistic commentary, just a questioning of it. This operation is basically organ harvesting. And you will continually question the logistics of this operation, which makes no sense whatsoever. They have to wait until tourists find their way on board this train so that they can take whatever they need from. I mean, fuck blood type matching and whether or not organs are going to likely to get rejected or a match or anything like that. It really is a fucking lottery. It's nonsense. The passengers on the train are the people who've paid for the service to receive these organs. So how do they know to be on the train when, oh, your liver's ready? It's absolute fucking nonsense. Why perform delicate surgery to harvest organs on a moving train? And why do it in such filthy conditions? I'll tell you why they do it in filthy conditions. Because because the things in hostel looked all filthy and dark and grimy, and it's got to look like hostel, right? So they do it in hostel. They do it in hostel, so they've got to do it here. It's got to look like it looks in hostel, despite the fact it makes no sense whatsoever. Wouldn't it have been nastier, creepier to move from one to normal looking passenger carriages, and then you make your way through into first class, and it's all sterile and septic, and there's tables there and doctors with masks and the neon lights and that, and all of a sudden you're under surgery? That would have been creepy in and of itself, not this ridiculous butcher job that this guy does on essentially their commodities. Don't even get me started on chopping the guy's dick off for some sort of penis transplant, because there's a guy on a train who looks at this guy's penis and goes, yep, I'll have that one. And then it gets ripped off. It's like, well, I don't want that. How are you going to perform very intricate, detailed vascular surgery to put this dick on my body now that you've just ripped it off? And how would that even work anyway? It's utter fucking nonsense. One of the girls is killed at the back of the train, and the people in charge, they don't want to put the shits up the passengers, so the guy has to ferry that victim on the roof down the length of the train to get to the front of the train. It's utter nonsensical fucking nonsense. Violence for the sake of violence trash. It's misogynistic. What they do to one of the girls is utterly fucking repugnant. And on top of that, even none of that was enough, it's fucking boring. Now, there is going to be another film in the Blood on the Tracks series that has some very questionable logistics attached to the train and what happens on the train. I'm holding off reviewing that one because I'm waiting for the short story it's based on to reach me, because I want to read that first. A lot of you now will already have guessed what that film is. It won't be next. What we're going to do next is look at The Three Faces of Terror, an Italian anthology movie by Sergio Stivoletti. Those of you keeping score will know that I checked out his film Wax Mask when we were doing our Waxworks mini-season. So next, The Three Faces of Terror. It cannot possibly be as bad as Train. This, just avoid it at all costs. It's repugnant. So until next time, all aboard, all other train related puns. Thank you for choosing to watch this video. Tickets please.